Hello everyone, and welcome to my Young and the Restless official 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Kyle takes a risky action to save his relationship, but a significant setback could end everything. This week on Young and Restless, Kyle has everything on the line, and if our prediction is correct, he will have to do everything in his power to save his relationship with Claire. But will his risky wager pay off, or will it backfire? If Kyle paid any attention whatsoever to his father's dire warning, he'll have realized that telling Claire half-truths about his time with Audra in Nice is something that could come back to bite him in the behind. Naturally, Kyle told his girlfriend that lie of omission, which is famous in soap operas and involves omitting important details that could make a person appear quite guilty. Jack made the point that omitting the details is what ultimately makes one appear even more guilty in the long run. As we saw in the preview clip for this week, if Young and Restless were a map, Kyle would be at the You Are Here section of the journey, where Claire demands the entire truth about what happened in France. It's going to take a bold move to navigate such a formidable obstacle in his relationship, and Kyle has about two options: tell the truth and let the chips fall where they may, or make a move so distracting that his girlfriend forgets all about the pesky details of his visit to Audra's sleeping car that night. Craigie Kyle option A shows more respect for Claire, but option B is pretty tempting, and as we all know, Kyle has rarely looked something so irresistible in the face and turned away. As a result, we anticipate that he will do everything in his power to prevent Claire from pursuing her mission to discover the truth. If our hunch is correct, Kyle's bold move, as teased in the Young and Restless spoilers, will be to drop to one knee and propose. Kyle made a proposal. How could something go wrong? Claire is not only a sweet young woman who is in love, but she is also a very smart cookie. As a result, there is a clear and present danger that such a daring move could backfire. If Victor's granddaughter finds out that her boyfriend is using a proposal to try to cover up more, he will make Claire believe that he did something wrong with Audra and is trying desperately to cover it up. People, timing is everything. If Kyle proposes to Claire, do you think she'll accept? Vote. Kyle Abbott has never been a man afraid of taking chances, but this week on The Young and the Restless, his latest gamble has the potential to either cement the relationship he desperately wants with Claire Newman or destroy it before it has the chance to fully bloom. And that dangerous balance is exactly what makes his story so compelling right now, because when we examine Kyle's character, we see a man who has been molded by privilege, shadowed by his father Jack's towering presence, and haunted by his past mistakes with women like Summer and Audra. So when spoilers tease that he takes a risky action to save his relationship, viewers immediately start questioning whether this is going to be a heartfelt gesture that shows growth or another reckless move that pushes Claire further away. And all signs currently point to the latter, since Jack's warning about the perils of telling half-truths has gone largely unheeded, leaving Kyle in a precarious situation where the omission of details about his time with Audra in Nice is the ticking time bomb in the middle of his romance, waiting for the right, or wrong, moment to explode. And the brilliance of this plot twist lies in how it blends soap opera tradition with modern storytelling, because in classic soap fashion the so-called lie of omission is always the most damning, not because of the deed itself but because of the trust it erodes. And Jack himself articulated this lesson with striking clarity when he told his son that omitting key information ultimately makes one appear more guilty than simply confessing, a truth Kyle seems incapable of grasping as he scrambles to hold on to Claire, who, being Victor's granddaughter, is no fool and has inherited both the intelligence and the intuition of her legendary family, which makes Kyle's predicament all the more dangerous, because if he underestimates Claire's ability to connect the dots, his plan will not only collapse but also brand him as manipulative in her eyes. Yet what pushes this storyline into explosive territory is the preview clip showing Claire demanding the entire truth about what happened in France, a direct confrontation that places Kyle squarely at a crossroads. And here the writers set up the quintessential soap dilemma. Does Kyle choose honesty, telling Claire everything about the infamous night in Audra's sleeping car, and risk losing her trust forever? Or does he lean into distraction and theatrics, trying to blindside her with a grand gesture so emotionally overwhelming that she forgets all about the truth she was searching for? A move that could either be genius or catastrophic depending on timing and execution. And if we really study Kyle's history, it becomes clear which route he is most likely to take, because though he has flashes of Abbott decency, He has also consistently shown a tendency to prioritize short-term gratification over long-term wisdom, which makes option B, the bold, risky distraction, the move he is almost destined to make, and according to our hunch, that distraction will take the form of a proposal, the ultimate soap opera sleight of hand where instead of answering difficult questions, a character drops to one knee, produces a dazzling ring, and shifts the entire conversation from accusation to adoration. But herein lies the beauty and the danger of this plot, because on paper, proposing to Claire could look like the most romantic gesture possible, cementing his devotion and offering her a future. Yet in practice, the timing of such a move makes it suspicious, especially to a woman as sharp and skeptical as Claire, who has already sensed that something is being hidden from her. And soap viewers know that once suspicion exists, even the most sincere gesture can be interpreted as manipulation, meaning Kyle's bold move has every chance of backfiring spectacularly. And when we talk about risk, this is the epitome of it, because while the payoff, winning Claire's unconditional yes, would catapult their relationship into a new and exciting chapter, the downside is devastating. If Claire believes Kyle is using the proposal as a smokescreen to cover up wrongdoings with Audra, then not only does he lose her trust, but he also loses her love, her respect, and perhaps even his chance to ever rebuild something with her. And what makes this moment even richer in dramatic texture is the context surrounding it, because Jack's fatherly advice lingers like a ghost in Kyle's ear, reminding him of the consequences of omission, while Victor's shadow looms large over Claire's choices, meaning that if Claire confides in her grandfather that Kyle is playing games, Victor will surely unleash fury on Jack's son for daring to treat his granddaughter with anything less than full honesty, setting up a family clash of epic proportions. And if we pause to consider the layered storytelling here, we realize that this isn't just a simple lover's quarrel, it's a narrative crucible where family legacies, generational wisdom, and individual impulses collide. And Kyle is the man stuck in the center, trying to balance love with deception, instinct with strategy, passion with fear. And as viewers we can't help but ask ourselves, is Kyle genuinely ready to propose to Claire because he sees her as his forever partner? Or is he doing it because he is desperate to stop her from digging deeper into France? And therein lies the crucial difference between sincerity and manipulation, a difference Claire will certainly pick up on, because unlike Summer, who once excused Kyle's reckless behavior out of her own blind love, Claire is entering this relationship with more caution, knowing the dangers of being tied to a man with secrets, and that cautious nature is exactly why Kyle's risky wager may not land the way he hopes, for soap romances thrive on timing, and as the old saying goes, timing is everything, which brings us back to the pressing question. If Kyle proposes, will Claire accept, or will she see through the glittering ring to the darker truth beneath? And while fans may hope for a fairy tale moment, the real drama, and the true trajectory of Kyle's character, comes from the possibility that she might hesitate, or even worse, say no, igniting a chain reaction of heartbreak, suspicion, and perhaps a renewed alliance between Claire and Victor against Kyle. And in a show like The Young and the Restless, where consequences always ripple outward, this single decision could shape not just a couple's future but also entire family dynamics. Because if Kyle loses Claire, he doesn't just lose a girlfriend, he loses a powerful connection to the Newman Empire. A connection that has the potential to change his place in Genoa City forever. And that is why this storyline feels so monumental right now, because Kyle is truly standing at the edge of a cliff, with everything to gain and everything to lose, and though the proposal may seem like a bold solution, it may ultimately prove to be the fatal misstep that ends his shot at lasting happiness. But in the world of soaps, nothing is ever truly final, and if this does backfire, Kyle may spend the next chapter of his story not just fighting for Claire's forgiveness but also proving to himself, to Jack, and to Victor that he can grow into a man worthy of the woman he claims to love, a battle that will test his resolve like never before, because one thing is for certain, Kyle Abbott is about to learn that when love, lies, and legacy collide, the fallout can either destroy you or transform you. And this week, we'll see exactly which fate he chooses. Kyle Abbott's life is a study in contradictions. A man who can be both bold and insecure, charming and reckless, romantic and calculating. And this week on The Young and the Restless, those contradictions are all crashing together in spectacular fashion as he teeters between winning the love of Claire Newman and losing her forever. Because while the preview footage has teased a heart-stopping confrontation where Claire demands answers about France, what happens behind the scenes is just as explosive, with Jack Abbott, Kyle's ever-watchful father, warning his son in no uncertain terms that lies of omission will always catch up with him. And if Kyle ignores that sage advice, he risks not only shattering his budding romance but also tarnishing the Abbott name in ways Jack has fought to protect for decades. And therein lies the dramatic richness of this arc, because we aren't just watching Kyle navigate a romance, we're watching a young man wrestle with legacy, identity, and the crushing weight of expectations. And yet despite all this wisdom at his disposal, Kyle still seems determined to outsmart fate by staging a bold, emotional gesture, the proposal, that he hopes will silence Claire's doubts and redirect her suspicions into joy. But as we've said before, timing is everything in Genoa City, and Kyle may be misjudging his girlfriend in a catastrophic way, because Claire is no naive ingenue, no pushover blinded by romance. She is Victor Newman's granddaughter, a woman who grew up hearing about betrayal, manipulation, and the razor-thin line between love and deception. So when she looks at Kyle and hears his words, she is weighing not just his sincerity but his motives, wondering if the gleaming ring in his hand is a promise of forever or a weapon of distraction. And the sheer tension of that question is what gives this storyline its fire, because if she says yes, the couple is thrust into a whirlwind of engagement drama, Newman-Abbott family clashes, and the ever-present shadow of Audra Charles waiting in the wings. But if she says no, if she doubts Kyle's heart in that pivotal moment, then the fallout could be devastating, not only pushing Claire away but potentially pulling Victor himself into the mix. And if that happens, Kyle is not just facing heartbreak, he is facing war, because Victor Newman does not take kindly to anyone mistreating his family, especially a granddaughter he is working so hard to integrate into his empire. And fans can imagine the fireworks if Victor perceives Kyle as manipulative, for the mustache has never hesitated to put the Abbotts in their place, whether it be Jack, Ashley, or now Kyle. And one call from Claire describing how Kyle tried to paper over secrets with a marriage proposal could ignite a Newman versus Abbott battle on an entirely new front, one that would ripple through Jabot, Newman Enterprises, and every corner of Genoa City society. But what heightens the tension even more is the lurking presence of Audra Charles, the woman at the center of Kyle's secret, because whether Kyle admits it or not, his night in Nice with Audra was more than just a harmless encounter. It was a spark, a temptation, a dangerous dance with a woman who thrives on chaos. And the longer Kyle tries to pretend it didn't matter, the more dangerous Audra becomes, because she is not the kind of woman who stays silent forever. And if she senses that Kyle is using Claire as his way forward, she may very well spill the details herself, not out of guilt but out of spite, forcing the truth into the light in the most dramatic fashion possible. And imagine the impact if Claire learns the truth not from Kyle, not from Jack, but from Audra herself, the very woman Kyle swears was nothing more than a business associate, because soap fans know that the delivery of a secret is just as important as the secret itself. And Claire discovering Kyle's lie through his rival's lips would be the ultimate humiliation, the kind of betrayal that cuts deeper than the act itself, because it proves her instincts were right all along. And if that moment arrives, Kyle's proposal won't just be meaningless, it will look like the ultimate manipulation, cementing Claire's decision to walk away, and possibly turning her into an even stronger Newman player in the ongoing power struggles that define this show. But let's not overlook the emotional core of this drama. Claire herself, a woman who has spent much of her life trying to overcome the shadow of her family name, trying to prove that she is more than just a Newman heir, that she is capable of making her own choices and building her own life. And Kyle, for all his flaws, represents to her both a fresh start and a dangerous echo of her past, because while he is loving, attentive, and passionate, he is also secretive, entitled, and sometimes careless, qualities that remind her of every story she's ever heard about the men who disappointed her family. And so in many ways, her confrontation with Kyle is more than just about France. It is about whether she can trust herself to choose differently, to love someone who will not repeat the cycles of dishonesty that have plagued her lineage. And when she looks at Kyle, ring in hand, heart on his sleeve, she will be forced to ask herself, is this man really offering me forever, or is he simply trying to buy time until the truth explodes? And the brilliance of the writing here is that both answers feel equally possible, because Kyle truly does love Claire, there's no denying that, but he also fears losing her so much that he is willing to gamble everything on a dangerous move. And love mixed with fear is always combustible, especially in Genoa City, where secrets are currency and trust is the rarest commodity of all. So as we head into this pivotal week, we as viewers are left on the edge of our seats, wondering whether Kyle's risky action will pay off or backfire spectacularly. And though history suggests that soap proposals rarely go smoothly, one thing is certain: whatever Claire decides in that moment will shape not only her relationship with Kyle but also her role in the Newman-Abbott saga. And with Victor watching closely, Jack fretting from the sidelines, Audra scheming in the shadows, and even Summer perhaps watching with renewed interest, the stage is set for one of the most dramatic relationship showdowns Genoa City has seen in months, and the fallout promises to shake families, companies, and hearts in equal measure, because in the end, this isn't just about whether Claire says yes or no, it's about whether Kyle Abbott can finally grow into the man he claims to be, or whether his old habits will once again leave him standing alone, ring in hand, wondering how he managed to lose it all. If Kyle Abbott thought the hardest part of this risky gamble was getting down on one knee and holding out a glittering ring, then he hasn't considered what comes next, because the true drama of a soap proposal is not the gesture itself but the ripple effects it creates. And in Genoa City those ripples turn into waves that crash through families, businesses, and friendships in ways that no one can fully predict, which is exactly why this storyline feels so loaded with potential, because whether Claire Newman says yes or no, the fallout will define the next chapter for nearly everyone connected to them, starting with Jack Abbott, who has been trying to warn his son that omission only creates guilt, that half-truths will always look worse when the full story inevitably comes to light. And while Jack loves Kyle with the kind of unconditional loyalty only a parent can muster, there is a simmering disappointment behind his eyes, a recognition that his son still hasn't learned the lessons Jack himself paid dearly to acquire. And if Kyle's proposal explodes in his face, Jack will be forced into the role of damage control, not just for his son's broken heart but also for Jabot's reputation, because a public blow-up between an Abbott heir and Victor Newman's granddaughter would have ripple effects on business alliances. And that's the last thing Jack needs when his company is already fighting to maintain stability. But if we step away from the boardroom and focus purely on the emotional battlefield, we see an even more dangerous landscape unfolding. Because Claire herself is not the type to hide her feelings once she feels betrayed, and if she senses that Kyle's proposal is nothing more than a smokescreen, her response could be both fiery and decisive, perhaps even storming straight to Victor with the truth, which would ignite one of the most volatile father-figure clashes the show has staged in years, with Victor ready to protect Claire at all costs and Jack forced to defend his son against accusations of manipulation. And while such a showdown would thrill viewers, it would leave Kyle caught in the middle of a war he cannot win, because when Victor Newman decides someone has wronged his family, forgiveness is not part of his vocabulary, and Kyle knows that being on Victor's bad side is not just unpleasant, it's potentially ruinous. And yet, for all these looming threats, we cannot forget the wild card in all this, Audra Charles, who is the silent puppet master in Kyle's secret, and who very well could be the key to whether this proposal sticks or shatters, because Audra thrives on chaos. And if she learns of Kyle's romantic gesture toward Claire, she might interpret it as a slap in the face, a clear declaration that Kyle is putting her in the past, and nothing makes Audra more dangerous than being discarded, meaning she could seize this moment to reinsert herself into the drama, perhaps by accidentally letting slip a damning detail about France, or even more boldly, confronting Claire directly in true soap fashion, delivering the revelation with enough venom to not only ruin the proposal but to poison Claire's image of Kyle forever. And what makes this so juicy is that Claire would then have to choose whether to believe her boyfriend or the woman who clearly wants to sabotage him. But as we know from decades of soap tropes, even the mere suggestion of betrayal from a rival is often enough to fracture trust, because suspicion grows faster than love in this world. And Kyle's downfall would be in assuming that a ring could erase the gnawing doubts in Claire's heart, when in fact it might only amplify them, because to a sharp woman like her, a sudden proposal in the middle of a confrontation doesn't feel romantic. It feels like a tactic, and tactics are the exact thing she has vowed to avoid in her relationships, given her Newman lineage, which means Kyle may be sabotaging himself without even realizing it. But suppose for a moment that she does say yes, that the power of the moment sweeps her away and she chooses to trust him despite her instincts. What then? Well, then the storyline takes on an entirely different but equally dramatic trajectory, because Claire would not be saying yes without reservations, and those reservations would eat at her in private, creating fertile ground for doubt, jealousy, and resentment to fester. And that is when Audra could strike, choosing the perfect moment to expose the truth and send Claire spiraling into the realization that her fiancé has been lying to her from the very beginning, and such a betrayal at the engagement stage is even more devastating than at the dating stage, because it transforms what could have been an argument into a potential broken engagement scandal, one that would ripple through both the Newman and Abbott families. And in Genoa City, a broken engagement is never just about two people. It becomes gossip, ammunition, and leverage in the never-ending battles for power. And that is why Kyle's choice to propose now is such a dangerous one, because win or lose, yes or no, the consequences are explosive. But what fascinates longtime viewers is not just the mechanics of the plot but the psychology behind it. The fact that Kyle is repeating the very mistakes that have haunted his relationships in the past, using grand gestures to cover deep flaws, relying on romance to patch over dishonesty.